Thank you, Randy. I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you guys. I'm going to try to share my screen, and I've got just a few PowerPoint slides, and I'll try to be somewhat brief. One thing that I think we at Duke Energy sometimes feel like is our business is really interesting, and it is to us, but not always to everybody else. So thanks for taking the time, and I hope I won't bore you to tears with some of this information. But what I'm going to kind of try to cover today that I hope you'll find of interest is kind of focusing on 3 C's: carbon reduction, customers, and community. So I'll be talking a little bit about things that the company's got going on right now and activities, and be glad to answer questions at the end. If I don't talk about some of the things, for a 15-minute presentation, I'm just going to kind of hit some highlights, and if you have some questions, feel free to ask on topics other than what I'm covering here. But I'm going to kind of start off with just a quick video here. Hopefully it will play. It's just 1 minute long, but it just kind of gives you a quick overview.
Duke Energy started in 1904 with renewable energy. As the industry evolved, we evolved too, bringing new sources of energy to the grid and using new technology that made it cleaner and more efficient. Today, we continue that tradition, providing customers the reliable, affordable power they need to build the lives and communities they want. We know our future depends on embracing innovation to deliver the smart solutions and green energy our customers demand, while creating value for you. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Duke Energy started in 1904 with...
Get it to transfer to the next slide. Just do it this way.
There we go.
All right. Great. Well, that just kind of gave you a quick highlight of some of what we're working on. But, you know, a lot of what we're doing now, it really has changed a lot in the 35 years I've been with the company. You know, it seems like it's a lot the same and what you look at and see outside, but there's been incredible advancements. You know, I can think back when I started off as an engineer in Salisbury. Every time a thunderstorm came along, we had lightning-related power outages. And when you were on call, you'd get called to go in the office and the phone was ringing. So you were trying to answer customer calls and write down, you know, their address, and then call in some assistants and some linemen to help you out. So a lot of it changed completely now, where a lot of it's automated, and the tools we're using help us kind of identify where outages are and that sort of thing. So there have been quite a number of advancements in the utility world. And we're always looking for ways to improve and you know, make the system more reliable. And one of the things when you think about our planning for the future that I'm going to talk about next is, you know, for the grid, you know, the system was designed for large, centrally located utility things, large coal plants or a large nuclear station. We started with hydroelectric, so we started as a renewable company, damming up the Catawba River down south of Charlotte and creating energy with the water flow with turbines. And, you know, over time, the demand grew, and you had to figure out more ways that there wasn't enough water flow to create enough energy for the demand. And what I'm going to talk about next is just thinking about the future, how we're planning ahead. And Duke Energy, every other year, we present to the Utilities Commission what we call an integrated resource plan. And that's just, you know, what we're planning for the future. What do we see, you know, as far as new technology, new power plants that might be needed. This year was a little bit different than we've done in the past. We involved, I think it was more than 200 stakeholders, and some, you know, folks that, you know, are all, you know, very diverse groups. Some folks want, you know, no fossil fuels. Some people, least expensive energy that you can have. And so we try to take all those into account. and presenting our 15-year plan to the Utilities Commission. And so we looked at different scenarios. What would it take if we wanted no fossil fuels in the next 15 years? And if we stayed the course. And so just going to kind of talk through some of that. So we looked at different plans. Some of them to get to, I think the governor had a plan to want to be 70% reduction in carbon emissions by 2030. And our goals last year we announced was to be at 50% reduction by 2050. And so we kind of laid out, how would we get to 70% reductions by 2030? By 2050, the goal, both the governor's plan and Duke's plan, is to be net carbon neutral. And some of it to get there, there's technologies that haven't been invented yet. There are things we're seeing fuel cells using hydrogen, smaller compact nuclear units, that sort of thing. So some of the technologies got to be invented and created in order to get there. But we've got a path right now. We feel like we can get there by 2030 to get to a 50% reduction, just in kind of staying the course with the plans that have been previously approved. And we've made a lot of headway. I'll show this next to show you a little bit about where we've been. This is kind of looking back to 2005 up to 2019. And so we've retired 6,500 megawatts of coal-fired units. And to give you an idea of the size of a power plant, our Belews Creek Steam Station, located in the southeast corner of Stokes County, is probably the closest large power plant that we've got to Surrey County and Mount Airy. That unit there is about 22 megawatts total. There are two very large units there. And we've just recently, in that plant, part of our plan to reduce carbon, we've run natural gas lines to the plant, and that plant can run on natural gas or coal. And natural gas, because of the capacity of the lines, it can only run at about 50% of the capacity. But we've also added 8,000 megawatts of renewable energy, and I'll talk a little bit more about solar here in a minute. But North Carolina surprises a lot of people to learn. North Carolina is #2 in the nation as far as installed solar energy. California is the only state that has more solar energy than North Carolina. And through some of these efforts, we've already reduced carbon emissions by 39% since 2005. And our plans are to double the renewable energy. I'll talk in a second about a big solar project planned for Surrey County that'll start next year. And so we're looking ahead, by 2030, the plan would be we've retired all of our coal-only units. So there are a couple of other coal units that we run natural gas to. And the benefit of natural gas, it still is a fossil fuel, but to produce the same amount of energy, it produces a lot less carbon dioxide than the standard. And so, by 2030, our goal, we feel pretty confident we can get there to get to a 50% reduction. And then by 2050 to be net carbon neutral. This is just a slide to give you an idea of some of the overview of the solar projects that we've got across the state. Duke Energy has several solar projects that we own and operate as part of our grid. We also buy a lot of solar energy from solar producers. And part of, one of the things when you think about solar energy, right now, North Carolina, Duke Energy's grid, we don't have any wind power. Duke Energy has a renewable energy company that does own a lot of wind and solar outside of our regulated territories. So we're very familiar with wind, but North Carolina has a few wind farms, but they aren't part of our grid. But the wind doesn't always blow and the sun doesn't always shine. So you also need the ability to store energy. And so the battery technology is coming along quite a bit. I'm trying to see if maybe my next slide shows it. But anyway, I'll go to the next slide here in a second. But the red ones there show some of the projects that are already kind of in place and operational. And then we've got another one planned for Stony Knoll, kind of down near Rockville area of Surrey County, a pretty large farm. And I'll talk about that next. But yeah, so I wanted to kind of go through thinking about the storage piece of that. Duke Energy down in upstate South Carolina created our first pump storage station, which is kind of like a big battery. So Lake Jocassee sits above Lake Kiowee, we have the ability with those turbines to reverse the turbines and pump the water back up to the upper reservoir. And there's a large nuclear station, the Coney Nuclear Station is also on Lake Kiowee. And so, use that nuclear energy at night. The units continue to run. There's not a lot of demand. And so it takes more energy to pump it back up than it produces coming down. So you kind of really lose some energy, but you're storing that energy for a peak time. So, 3 to 5 o'clock on a hot summer day, 8 o'clock in the morning on a winter day, you've got that battery. Essentially, it's a big hydro station with that water stored above the turbines that we can kind of turn loose. So that was kind of one of the first things that we did. And then later in the mid 80s, we added our Bad Creek steam station. And so here you can kind of see some of the different projects we've been doing. In 2016, you can see the one there at the top, McAlpine Grid is down in Charlotte. That's an area we kind of worked with the city of Charlotte and had a fire station. They've got battery storage. They've got a generator. They've got solar energy there. And it was kind of a test case. It was close to our corporate office, so engineers could kind of monitor and see how that works. And so that's helped us in kind of getting to where we're seeing larger batteries that we can utilize to store energy, when the sun is shining and the wind's blowing. But the battery storage gets pretty expensive. And when we look back, I mentioned the Bad Creek station. That started about the time I started the company in the mid 80s. I remember having an opportunity in 1986 to go tour the cavern. They essentially drilled through a granite mountain, put turbines in. You felt like you were going in a James Bond movie. They drove a school bus into the bottom of the hill, into the mountain to look at these generators. But since 1976, they're changing out those turbines. There are 4 units there, and they're changing those units out, and they're going to improve the amount of capacity by about 30% just by more efficient turbines that they're putting in. So just another way that we're trying to improve the ability to store energy. Let me back up here before I leave that slide. And I was going to talk a little bit more about solar energy as well. And looking at that, slide, we talked about our ability to provide investments. We've invested more than $1 billion in the Carolinas. We've got 40 solar facilities, and at peak time when they're producing energy in the sunshine, and they can power enough, produce enough energy to provide power to about 500,000 homes. And I mentioned the Stony Knoll project that we've got planned to start next year down near Rockville. That unit's going to be, that farm is it's a 333 acre site, and we're going to put solar panels on about 152 acres. So there'll be a lot of room for buffers and to fit in with the community down there. But that's going to produce about 22.6 megawatts of energy. So thinking about that, that's close to what our Blues Creek steam station produces. So a pretty large station there. And that'll be in place. We anticipate that farm could last, I guess, the lease we've got on the land for 35 years, and we've got an option to increase to sign up for another 35 years. And right now we've got a 20-year contract, and Duke competes in these solar projects. We compete with the private industry for installing these solar farms. So, we kind of have to get in the queue and try to produce and make our pitch to the company to be the least cost unit. So we've got a 20-year contract for that unit there. I'll mention with that project too in Surrey County, one of the things we try to do in conjunction with that is be a good corporate citizen. So I worked with our renewable team, and we identified an opportunity at Copeland Elementary School. So through our Duke Energy Foundation, we're going to provide them a $10,000 grant to buy Chromebooks. I worked with the principal there, and she said about $10,000 is what they needed to buy additional Chromebooks for their students. So we were glad to partner with that, and we'll have an opportunity to make a little presentation around that project, I think at the school board meeting for Surrey County Schools in early January. We also, Duke has North Carolina Green Power, something we kind of operate with the state. It allows customers to donate money essentially through their power bills. We don't keep any of it. We transfer 100% of it over to NC Green Power, and they use that money to provide grants. And I think they've been able to provide about $300,000